We're going to pull this quote. This has been something I've brought up a couple times on this show, and it really frames the whole thing. And I know you know a thing or two about size of recruits. You get teased out of constantly. So this is Mel Tucker. This was actually right before he got to Michigan State, but he said things similar along the way in East Lansing. Quote, I don't even want them on my recruiting board unless they have size. Like, we're not even going to recruit them because if you make an exception, you're going to have a team full of exceptions. There might be a kid that's 6 feet, 245 pounds at defensive end that wants to come, and he might be a good player, but at the end of the day, you end up playing against Georgia or Alabama, and that kid will have a hard time holding up, end quote. That's Mel Tucker on his recruiting strategy. Obviously, you can say, okay, he wants big guys. He wants the maul guys. That's what he wants to do. That's the takeaway everyone has. But my bigger takeaway was invoking Alabama, invoking Georgia. He's saying, I'm watching the college football playoff and I'm looking at these smaller guys get pushed around if they even get that far. You know, Washington squeaks in and gets blasted. This is sort of setting a different tone where he's not recruiting to win the Big Ten. He's recruiting to get to the big stage and actually be competitive when he gets there. Do you think this is crazy? Am I reading that wrong? It seems to be where he's going with it.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And when you've coached at places like Alabama and Georgia, like he's not just saying that to say it. He knows what it takes because he's been at those places, right?
Yes.
Won a national championship on Nick Saban's staff in 2015, that team that beat MSU in the playoff. Went to Georgia with Kirby Smart, gets to a national championship with them. Like he's been at these programs. He understands like what it takes. He's seen the big bodies that you need up front to push guys around in the trenches and, you know, the athletes that you need on the outside. So he has not just size, but he also has athleticism requirements. He's got basically a 5-point system that, okay, if a guy is maybe lacking a little bit of height, again, they're not going to take 6-foot defensive ends or anything like that, but maybe you can sacrifice a little bit of height if you have a little bit more explosion off the line of scrimmage or something like that, you know? So I think they have a very specific system and a model for the player that they want. And again, that all goes back to these SEC days. And I think when you're talking about going beyond the Big Ten, I mean, again, he's a big picture thinker. So he could see Michigan State as a sleeping giant. You know, we got to the college football playoff in 2015. Who's to say we can't get back, right? Maybe the next time we get back, we have players that are bigger. Maybe, you know, you're not going to get the 5-star guys that are running 4.4s that are 6'6" defensive ends. Like that's tough to do.
Yes.
But if you can get a 6'6" D end who has got some bend and you know, maybe some more power than speed or something like that, you can offset it in different ways. You can match up physically. And that's what you need against those teams. Otherwise, you're going to get blown out of the water like we saw 5-6 years ago. So I think that's his mindset when it comes to recruiting. And obviously, recruiting is what he's all about. He's been doing it for so long. Like that's kind of like his bread and butter at this point. So I think when you hear him talk about recruiting, you see his eyes light up. You see like he has a clear preference and he's not going to deviate from that because he knows what he wants. And he thinks that's a blueprint to get back to where MSU was a couple years ago.
Freaking idiot. Shouldn't even have a show.